Hi everyone and welcome. We're in my wormery, and if you've ever visited my channel before, you might already know what we're doing here. We're going to be taking some of these old kitchen scraps here, some rotted apples and even an orange, which you normally don't feed oranges to worms, but we're going to give them some anyway. As long as it's done in moderation, it's fine. Cauliflower, a mango that I just cut in half. In the past, I've cut mangoes in half when they were frozen solid, which was actually easier using a saw. Cutting this one that's not frozen in half with a knife was a pain. That pit in the middle is really hard, and it does take time for the worms to break it down, but I figured I would go with one of these slower composting little pieces of material because I expect these two worm bins to be around for a while. These two bags here are running nightcrawlers. If you've been here before, you may or may not have noticed that I've got a little view panel on the side of the VermiBag Mini. It's an optional accessory which allows view into the bin even if the lid's closed. So I've opened that just to allow some of the light streaming in from outside through the window to maybe get in there and help us see better. So why don't I get my glove on and we'll proceed with feeding the VermiBag Mini first. These night crawlers were last fed 8 days ago. And I have not really had a chance to check in on them. Sometimes midweek I'll check in on them. More recently because I was concerned about moisture in these bins. And I was periodically coming in to add moisture, but I was going to see if this additional sheet of cardboard, which I just started adding to the additional existing layers of paper and cardboard, to see if it would help with the retention of moisture. Coffee filters. My coffee filters usually act as a position indicator to show where I last fed, but the hazard of putting paper directly on the surface of your worm bin is that they're going to chew away at the paper. This paper is just another food item for them. We're going to just try to continue using this one a little bit longer since it's still in pretty decent shape, not too badly chewed up yet. I'm very pleased to see that the moisture level in here is pretty decent, like very much right here on the top outer edge, where there is that little chance of evaporation to occur around the cardboard. It's a little bit drier, but not dangerously dry. Everywhere else, right nearby, right there near the edge, you can already see right along the edge. They're hanging out, perfectly comfortable being there. If it was very dried out and inhospitable to the worms, you could believe it that they're not going to be there. They'll go find something better. Taking forever. Corn always takes forever. So if you do put corn in, go into it with that proper expectation. Otherwise you could end up scratching your head as to why is it taking so long. I'm sure if it was somehow pulverized or who knows, maybe if it had just been sitting outside for some time and already started, breaking down and rotting away, it might have given it a jump start for the worms to be able to get at it more readily. But it just takes time. Just the worms need the other composting helpers to take a bite out of it first before they can. Alright, sorry to interrupt these little guys. You can see some of these little guys, like the one on my thumb here, as well as this guy sitting right here on the ear of corn. They're little ones, but this other guy over here is a pretty hefty looking worm. So we've got different generations, large worms, small worms, all hanging out together, which is a pleasant thing for me to start observing at this point, because it was only a few months back that I actually received these worms while they were still unhatched inside their cocoons. These, the larger ones at least that you're seeing in this video, were ones that were actually born here in my wormery, and any smaller ones are actually probably still just the first generation of my originally hatched worms finally getting of age and starting to breed, multiply. We're seeing bits and pieces of some of the last feeding. This is a tomato. This other thing with a little bit of red on it, green, is watermelon. Here's a banana peel. Corn, obviously, we saw before. First thing I want to add is a handful of shredded cardboard. And then on top of that, we can start placing in some of the new food. It's a half of a mango and a half of an orange. Apples, I believe I've got 6 here, so we'll throw 3 of them in here. We'll save the other 3 for the other bin. Some of these are nice and chewy and already moldy, which the worms should like. This one here is going to need a little bit more help. This one's already got a nice soft spot developing on it. Besides that, I got a piece of cauliflower, which I think once it starts to look like this, I think it's already getting bad. So we'll give half of it to these guys. Save the other half for the next bin. I think the only remaining stuff here is a small portion of the cherry tomatoes that are kind of all dried out and nasty already. A piece of celery, and before we place the old food on top, let's give them a little bit of grit, as well as a little bit of coffee. So here in the bright sunlight you could see some of this dust flying around. I'm trying my best to turn my head away a little bit and breathe from the other direction. This dust here is probably not entirely broken up eggshell, but earlier when I had placed in the eggshell, some of what rose off of there could have been very finely ground eggshell, and if it were, it's always very best to avoid breathing any of that in, because it can harm your lungs. So be careful if you're using ground up eggshells. So now I'm just starting to put some of this older food right back on top. Here's one of the pieces of corn. I can't remember where I put the other piece. I knew I was handling it earlier. I believe it is right here. So in time, those things will break down. Eventually, I think we'll just see a whole bunch of them congregating through the center and emptying the guts of the ear of the corn out first, because that's really good stuff that they like. And then once they've done that, the whole backbone of the piece of corn cob is pretty much done. It can start flaking apart, breaking apart much more easily. Here too, I'm seeing different stuff that I think is perhaps leftover food. And things do seem a little bit almost muddy up here, you know, when I go through some of the old food stuff that's still in the process of breaking down, covered up in compost. It is pretty gooey stuff. And I think that's still fine at this point, you know, when a bin is still sort of just trying to get its, get its population really working hard. Alright, so things do look a little bit muddy here on top. They feel that way too, to a certain degree. But I'm not too worried about it right now. I think I would prefer something that's a little bit more on the moist side than something that's looking like it's going to dry up every minute. So right now I'm quite happy to have the consistency of this material looking like this. And the addition of fresh food is going to keep it pretty moist as well. So I'm just glad I don't need to be adding additional moisture. I don't need to be spraying it down like I was a few weeks ago. So it looks like some of these moisture retention things that I've been doing lately are helping. So that's a good thing. So as far as feeding indicators go, I think this might be the last time we see this coffee filter serving that function. At some point in the near future we'll replace it and just use this as just additional bedding and mix it in with their food and everything else. So yeah, I think I like what I'm seeing here. It's pretty nice. Pretty good. This one extra piece of cardboard surprisingly really made the difference. Prior to me doing that, the bin seemed a little bit overly dry. One extra piece of cardboard seems like it's helping a lot. I don't think the camera was running, so I've got a funny feeling this feeding was missed. If that's the case, let me just recap really quickly. If that was the case, then we're pretty much done here. But after we finished the VermiBag Mini feeding the European nightcrawlers, we worked our way over to this bin, which is the VermiBag Tote, and here we've got African nightcrawlers. And I had just gone through here to open up the old feeding zone and add in some new food, put on a little bit more leafy matter across the top. And I've still only got a little bit more to do here. I just wanted to add a little bit of grit and some of the coffee grounds that I've got remaining to this feeding and be done with it. But maybe we could still take a quick peek and show what happened. Some of this material here is the old apples from previous feeding, and in here right next to the older apples is a new apple, couple new apples added, mango with its seed. All of the old food that I found while I was digging through here got placed on top of the fresh food, so actually none of the fresh food we added I think is going to be visible. Here too we could see the old corn cob from previous feedings, going quite a way back now since corn cob takes a while. This was a hunk of watermelon that was part of the last feeding. It's starting to get worn down pretty nicely. So before we part ways, I just wanted to make sure I include a little bit of grit, which has been omitted recently in a lot of my feedings just because I didn't have any, but I did make some more the other day. So they're going to get the grit that they need after not getting it for a couple of feedings recently. So this is kind of where we stand, I guess, with this bin. Main reason I went for my leaf supply to grab what I had remaining in the box to throw on top of here was because of the food pieces being visible right there on the top surface. Hopefully just by using the coffee at the end there, covering it up, it doesn't become so, you know, so much just food sticking out the top. I usually like to have a top layer of more of a bedding type material or finished castings. For me, it just seems like, you know, food right on the top surface should be covered up, at least to a certain degree. Mainly to, you know, prevent insects from getting in there, but luckily this bin has a lid and the insects aren't going to go there anyway. So I'm putting a new feeding zone indicator on here. Nice fresh coffee filter. Since I don't believe we had a feeding zone indicator in this bin until now, so a little upgrade. That's where we stand now in my VermiBags. I'm going to clean up here a little bit. Got a little bit of cleaning up to do, luckily not too much. But I won't keep you around for that, that's boring. I just want to really quickly say thank you. Thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and consider becoming a subscriber to the channel. Alright everyone, thanks for keeping me company, and we'll see you back here next time.